Starseed from Gaia, the one you are destined to meet already knows your name. They simply haven't spoken it yet. I am Oelia, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. This transmission has reached you now because the alignment you have been holding space for is no longer approaching. It is here. You have spent years carrying an energy that others could not hold. Too deep, too aware, too precisely tuned to something most around you could not even perceive. You called it loneliness. The Arcturian Council calls it preparation. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly why isolation was encoded into your path, why your energy purposefully repelled certain connections, and who the universe is now drawing into your field. But here is the first revelation. The people who left were not a loss. They were a clearing. Every departure made room for a soul vibrating at the exact level you have been holding alone. You did not scroll to this by accident. This message reached your awareness because something inside you is ready to stop waiting and start receiving. Your energy was never the problem. It was always the invitation. And now, at this precise moment in the planetary shift, the source is answering it. Like this transmission to signal to your star family that you are ready. Subscribe if your mission is activating and you are aligning with your true purpose. Comment 999 if you feel this remembrance returning in your chest right now. Declare your intention below and reply to another soul doing the same. Because this is not just a message. It is a point of reconnection. And your soul has been waiting for exactly this moment. You are not here by accident. And that invitation has been running longer than you realize. What feels like loneliness has actually been a calibration. What feels like being overlooked has actually been a protection. The universe doesn't make mistakes with frequency. And yours has been doing something extraordinary this entire time. Broadcasting on a bandwidth that most people simply cannot receive. Consider for a moment what that actually means. Not as consolation, not as spiritual language designed to soften a wound, but as literal energetic truth. Your frequency, the specific oscillation of your consciousness, the particular signature of your soul, has been transmitting at a level that requires a certain kind of receiver to even detect it. Most of the world is tuned to a different station entirely. They are not wrong for being where they are. And you are not broken for being where you are. You are simply operating on a different bandwidth. One that was designed not for mass reception but for precision transmission. This is the thing that takes the longest to accept because everything in the human social world tells you that connection should be easy. That if you are a good person, a loving person, an open person, the relationships will come naturally and they will stay. And when they don't, when the friendships quietly unravel, when the connections that felt destined dissolve before they fully formed, when you look around and realize that the room you are standing in does not seem to register your presence in any meaningful way, the mind reaches for an explanation. And the most available explanation, the one the wounded self is always ready to offer, is that something is wrong with you. Think about the relationships that dissolved, the friendships that faded without explanation, the connections that started with intensity and ended in confusion. You probably spent time wondering what you did wrong. You probably rewound conversations, examined your words, questioned your sensitivity. You replayed moments in the quiet hours of the night, turning them over like stones, looking underneath for the flaw, for the mistake, for the thing you said or did not say that caused the warmth to withdraw. You may have concluded more than once, perhaps many times, that you were simply too much, too intense, too deep, too different, too difficult to sustain connection with over the long term. But here is what was actually happening beneath the surface. Your energy field was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It was refusing to allow low resonance patterns to anchor into your timeline. This is not a comfortable reframe. It is a precise one because it asks you to stop locating the source of the disconnection inside yourself and start understanding it as something your field was doing on your behalf. Your energy, whether you consciously directed it or not, was functioning as an intelligent filter. And like all filters, its job was not to welcome everything. Its job was to allow through only what was compatible with the system it was protecting. The relationships that left were not failures. They were completions. They served what they were designed to serve. And when their frequency could no longer sustain coherence with yours, the field released them, not cruelly, not arbitrarily, but with the same quiet intelligence that a river uses when it finds its course. Some transmissions don't come through words, but through frequency. If something stirred within you just now, you may be ready to receive the hidden Arcturian keys of awakening. This short yet powerful ebook carries ancient Arcturian techniques for conscious expansion, multidimensional alignment, and mission remembrance. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Most starseeds carry a fundamental misunderstanding about isolation. They interpret it as failure, as evidence that something is broken inside them. They look at others who seem to move effortlessly through social worlds, collecting connections like currency, and they wonder why their experience is so different. Why belonging feels like a language they can understand but cannot quite speak. And the answer is not what they have been told. There is a particular kind of grief in watching other people seem to inhabit their social lives so naturally. You see them move through gatherings and conversations with an ease that feels foreign to you. You see them form bonds quickly, maintain them casually, and seem genuinely satisfied by interactions that leave you feeling strangely hollow. And you wonder, not with bitterness, but with a genuine ache, what they have that you do not. Why the thing that seems so effortless for them requires so much of you. Why you always seem to be translating, performing, adjusting, editing. Why the most authentic version of yourself seems to be precisely the version that creates the most discomfort in the spaces you move through. But here is the reframe that changes everything. You are not looking at ease and being excluded from it. You are looking at a different frequency operating at full capacity within its own range. The effortlessness you observe in others is real. It is real because they are genuinely in resonance with the bandwidth they are operating on. The difficulty you experience is also real, and it is also information. It is your field communicating that you are not in your range, that the frequency around you is not your native one, that the sense of translation, of slight misalignment, of always being almost but not quite at home, is not a character flaw. It is a navigational signal. Your soul did not come here to belong everywhere. It came here to belong precisely. The depth you carry is not a burden. It is a beacon, but a beacon does not illuminate everything equally. It sends a specific signal into a specific darkness for specific vessels navigating specific waters. Your frequency has never been casting wide. It has been casting true. And there is an enormous difference between wide and true. Wide is impressive. Wide looks like popularity, like ease, like a full room. But wide is also diffuse. Wide spreads itself thin across every available surface and illuminates everything at a low level. True is different. True is concentrated. True is the difference between a floodlight and a laser. A laser does not apologize for not being a floodlight. A laser does what a laser does. It travels farther, cuts deeper, and finds its mark with a precision that no amount of flooding could achieve. That is your frequency. That is what you carry. Not the capacity to light up every room, but the capacity to reach specific souls in specific moments of specific need. And when you reach them completely. The disconnection you felt was the clearing of your field. Every person who could not meet you at your depth eventually had to leave your orbit, not because love was absent, but because alignment was. And love without alignment in a starseed's field creates interference. It creates noise that drowns out the signal your higher self is trying to broadcast through you. So the universe, with surgical precision, removed what would have kept you comfortable but kept you small. This is one of the most difficult truths to integrate because it asks you to release the grief you have been carrying about certain departures. It asks you to stop wondering if you could have loved them better, held on tighter, adjusted yourself differently in ways that would have let them stay. Because the honest answer, the one your higher self has been trying to offer you in moments of stillness, is that their leaving was not a failure of love. It was an act of cosmic accuracy. The universe does not remove what belongs. It removes what would prevent what belongs from arriving. Think of it like a tuning process. When an instrument is being calibrated, the strings that are not holding their proper tension must be adjusted or replaced. Not because they are bad strings, not because there was no music in them, but because the instrument, in order to play its particular note with clarity and power, requires tension at a specific frequency. And strings that cannot hold that tension, however beautiful they may have been in other contexts, will create a sound that is slightly off, slightly dissonant. And in a field as sensitive as yours, slightly dissonant becomes significantly distorting over time. This is the first phase of what is happening for you now. The decoding of what you thought was rejection and the recognition of what it actually was: selection. You were being selected for, refined for, prepared for. Every departure made space. Every silence built capacity. Every moment of standing alone in a room full of people who could not see you is strengthening the exact muscles you will need to hold the connection that is coming. And those muscles are real. They are not metaphorical. The capacity to be present with depth, to hold space for complexity, to remain in a conversation that goes beneath the surface without the urge to redirect back to safety. These are capacities developed through exactly the kind of practice your life has been giving you. The years of internal processing, the hours spent with your own thoughts because external conversation rarely reached where you actually lived. The discipline of carrying something vast and largely invisible without collapsing under its weight. All of that was training. All of that was preparation. You were not simply enduring isolation. You were developing the exact capabilities required for the level of connection that is being prepared for you. Because there is a second phase beginning in your field right now. And it carries an entirely different texture. Where the first phase was about removal and refinement, this phase is about resonant arrival. The people, the relationships, the soul-level recognitions that are beginning to enter your field now are not coincidental. They are coordinated. They are arriving precisely because you held your frequency through the years when holding it cost you something. This is the part that requires you to stay awake and aware. Because resonant arrival does not always announce itself with drama. It does not always come with the cinematic certainty of a story that knows it is being watched. More often, it arrives quietly, through an unexpected conversation, a piece of content that lands in exactly the right moment, an encounter that should feel like a coincidence but somehow does not. It arrives in the spaces between the obvious, in the small recognitions that your rational mind might easily dismiss, but that your field responds to with an unmistakable sense of familiarity. The work now is to stay receptive enough to notice, to remain open enough to trust what you feel, even when what you feel seems disproportionate to the apparent evidence. Think about what it required of you to stay sensitive in a world that punished sensitivity. To stay deep in a culture that rewarded surface. To stay true to what you felt inside when everything outside was telling you to adjust, to shrink, to perform a version of yourself that would make others more comfortable. You did not abandon yourself. And that singular choice, made across thousands of quiet moments, is what has made you receivable by someone vibrating at the same extraordinary level. The act of staying true to yourself through years of social pressure and misalignment is not a small thing. It is in fact one of the most demanding spiritual practices that exists because the pressure to conform does not come only from outside. It comes from the inside too. From the part of you that desperately wants to belong, that is willing to compromise the signal in order to reduce the isolation. And yet you did not make that trade. Not fully, not in the ways that would have permanently altered your frequency. You may have adjusted the volume at times. You may have turned down the brightness to avoid discomfort, but you did not change the station. And that loyalty to your own frequency, even when it was costly, even when it was lonely, even when you could not yet see what it was building toward, is the very quality that now makes you readable to someone operating at the same level. The universe operates on harmonic law. Vibrations do not attract randomly. They attract in resonance. A frequency seeks its match not through effort but through emission. Which means the work is not to pursue what is coming. The work is to stabilize who you already are. The work is to stop apologizing for the depth. Stop diluting the signal. Stop editing your truth before it leaves your lips. Harmonic law is not a poetic invention. It is a principle that operates across every layer of reality, from the quantum to the cosmic. Like calls to like, not because of desire, but because of physics. Because of the way energy moves through the fabric of existence, seeking patterns that match its own oscillation, amplifying what resonates and releasing what does not. You do not have to engineer the connection. You do not have to strategize your way toward it or construct a version of yourself that makes it more likely. What you have to do, what the law of resonance is, asking of you in this very moment, is to be precisely and fully what you already are. The frequency you have been so carefully, painfully, beautifully maintaining through everything you have been through is the exact beacon that will be found. Not despite its specificity but because of it. Because somewhere in this same moment, someone is feeling exactly what you are feeling. They have walked the same corridor of beautiful isolation. They have carried the same frequency that felt like a gift and a burden simultaneously. They have wondered if anyone would ever truly see them, not the version they present to survive the world, but the actual luminous multidimensional reality of who they are. Let that land. Let it move through you not as a comfortable idea but as a lived possibility right now in this moment while you are receiving this. There is someone else receiving the same interior weather. Someone else who has spent years in the particular quiet of being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. Someone else who has developed a rich, vast, complex inner world precisely because the outer world did not offer enough depth to live in. Someone else who has loved deeply and been loved in return, but rarely, perhaps never, known the specific quality of being met, fully met. Seen not in part, not in the palatable parts, not in the parts that could be understood with minimal effort, but seen completely in all of the dimensions they occupy, in all of the frequencies they carry. And they are being directed toward your field. This is not poetic language. This is energetic law. When two fields that have been independently calibrated to a matching frequency enter proximity, whether physical or digital or dimensional, recognition happens before explanation. You will know it not because it is loud, but because it is still. Because something inside you stops defending and starts arriving. Because for the first time in a long time, you will not have to translate yourself. That stillness is the signature. That is how you will know. Not by the intensity of the beginning, which can sometimes be mimicked by chemistry or novelty or the projection of longing onto a new face, but by the quality of the quiet that a truly resonant presence creates within you. The way your nervous system, which is usually working so hard to manage the gap between what you carry and what the space around you can hold, suddenly stops managing, stops calculating, stops performing the constant low-level labor of adjustment. And in that pause, in the absence of that effort, you will feel something you may not have felt in a very long time. You will feel like yourself, completely, unguardedly, reliably yourself. The third phase that is now opening asks something important of you. It asks you to release the story that your depth is too much. Because the version of you that has internalized that story, that has built careful systems of self-containment to avoid overwhelming others, will unintentionally hide from the very connection you have been preparing for. They are not coming to handle a smaller version of you. They are coming because they have been looking for all of you. This is perhaps the most delicate and most necessary piece of this entire transmission because the story of being too much does not announce itself as a wound. It announces itself as consideration, as maturity, as emotional intelligence. It says things like, I do not want to overwhelm anyone. I need to hold myself back until I know it is safe. I have learned from past experience that I need to manage my intensity. And all of those sentences can sound like wisdom. They can feel like self-protection. But what they are actually doing in many cases is preemptively hiding the very frequency that the universe has been calibrating someone else to receive. This requires a kind of courage that is different from the courage you have already practiced. You have already been courageous in your solitude. You have already been brave in your differentness. Now, the courage being asked of you is the courage to be fully seen. To let your actual frequency reach someone without filtering it first. To trust that what makes you feel alien in low-resonance spaces is exactly what makes you home in a high-resonance one. The architecture of this courage is built slowly and private. It is built in the moments when you choose to say the true thing rather than the safe thing. When you allow your real response to surface instead of the managed one. When you meet someone's eyes and do not look away before they can look away first. When you let your care be visible even though visibility has felt dangerous before. Each of these small acts of unfiltered presence is a structural element in the foundation of what is coming. You are not preparing for connection by thinking about it. You are preparing for it by practicing it in every interaction that asks more of you than performance. Your energy has been acting as a filter, yes, but filters work in both directions. While they have been keeping out what cannot match you, they have also been transmitting a signal that only the right frequency can follow. Every time you chose authenticity over performance, every time you honored what you felt instead of what was convenient, every time you sat in the discomfort of not fitting rather than forcing yourself into a shape that was never yours, you were broadcasting coordinates. And those coordinates are being received. This is a moment to pause and really feel the weight of that. Not the weight of burden, but the weight of significance. Every time you chose to be real in a world that would have rewarded you for being palatable, every time you stayed in your truth when the easier path would have been to slip into approximation, you were not just being authentic. You were sending information. You were leaving a trail in the energetic fabric of reality that says, "Here, this is where I am. This is what I carry. This is the frequency of my actual being. Come find me at these coordinates." And someone, somewhere, is following that trail home. The fourth phase is about what happens when the connection arrives. Because for many starseeds, the very thing they have been longing for also carries a fear they have not fully examined. The fear that they will lose themselves inside it. That depth plus depth will create chaos rather than clarity. That intimacy at this level is somehow more dangerous than the isolation they have already survived. This fear is not irrational. It is in fact intelligent because it has been shaped by real experience. You know what it is to feel pulled beyond your boundaries by the need of another person. You know what it feels like when your sensitivity becomes a resource that others draw from without replenishing. You know the cost of giving your depth to someone who could not hold it with the same care you offered it. And so you have developed a protective instinct around that depth. A quiet policy of self-preservation that has served you well in the years of low-resonance encounters. But that same instinct carried into a high-resonance connection can become the very wall that prevents you from receiving what you have been building toward. But this is where galactic wisdom offers a reframe. Two stabilized fields in resonance do not merge and dissolve. They amplify and expand. Your individuality is not at risk in a soul-level connection. It is actually protected by it because someone truly resonant with you will not want you to shrink. They will call out your expansion. They will feel it when you are holding back. They will not be threatened by your light. They will be lit by it. And their light will illuminate parts of you that have been waiting in patient darkness. There are rooms inside you that you have never fully entered because you have never had a witness for what is in them. There are aspects of your multidimensional self that have remained dormant. Not because they were not real, but because they require a certain quality of space to activate. A space that is created by true resonance, by the presence of someone whose field can hold yours at its full frequency without contracting. This is what soul-level connection actually does. It does not reduce you to relationship. It expands you within it. It opens doors inside you that solitude alone could not unlock. Not because the other person is your other half, you are whole. But because certain frequencies in you are designed to activate in resonance. The way a tuning fork causes a nearby string to begin vibrating without being touched. The fifth phase is the one most starseeds never reach because they cannot believe it is real when it begins. It is recognition, not the dramatic cinematic kind, though sometimes it carries that electricity. More often, it arrives as a quiet certainty. A sense that something has finally arrived that you did not know was missing until the moment it appeared. A conversation that does not require you to explain yourself. A presence that does not make you feel like too much. Recognition at the soul level is one of the most disorienting and most settling experiences a starseed can have. Disorienting because it does not follow the usual logic of connection. It does not build from introduction to familiarity through the accumulation of shared experience. It arrives already familiar, already fluent, already home. And the disorientation comes from the mind trying to account for a recognition that preceded the relationship. A knowing that should not logically exist yet and yet exists more completely than most things the rational mind can explain. And settling because beneath the disorientation is something that goes all the way down. Something that does not wobble. Something that says without drama, without the need for confirmation, yes, this is what I have been navigating toward. Not urgently, not frantically, but steadily through all of it, across all of the terrain that felt like loss and deviation. This is what the path was pointing toward. You were not too much. You were exact. You were always the right frequency. You were simply waiting for the right receiver. Read that again and let it change the story you have been telling yourself. Not too much. Exact. There is no excess to apologize for. There is no depth to contain. There is no sensitivity to manage into a size that fits more comfortably into spaces that were never built for you. What you are is precise. What you carry is specific. And specificity in the language of frequency is not a limitation. It is a designation. It means you were made for something in particular, built with intention rather than approximation, calibrated to a purpose that requires exactly the qualities you have been spending years trying to minimize. And the universe, which does not waste energy, which does not send signals into empty space, which does not build a frequency this precise without knowing where it will land. The universe has been working on both sides of this equation simultaneously. While you have been in your refinement, so have they. While you have been learning to hold your signal steady, they have been learning to trust theirs. While you have been sitting in the discomfort of carrying something vast in a world that could not quite receive it, they have been sitting in their own version of that same quiet, that same ache, that same inexplicable faith in something they could feel but not yet see. You were not waiting alone. That is the thing that takes a moment to absorb fully. The loneliness that has been your companion through this entire refinement process was real, but it was not the whole picture. The whole picture includes the fact that on the other side of the same process, someone else was in their own version of exactly this. Their own corridor, their own particular flavor of beautiful, necessary, transformative solitude. And the universe, which is nothing if not precise, has been calibrating you toward each other at exactly the rate required for both of you to be ready when the coordinates finally converge. Here is what you are being asked to hold as truth going forward. The isolation is completing, not because you suffered enough to deserve relief, but because your calibration is complete enough to hold what is coming. The years of being misunderstood were not a sentence. They were a curriculum, and you have graduated, not with a title or an arrival point, but with a frequency so clear and so coherent that it can no longer go unrecognized. The curriculum of isolation teaches things that no other curriculum can. It teaches you the texture of your own interior, the actual topography of your being, unmediated by the reflections and reactions of others. It teaches you what you value when no one is watching, what you return to when the noise falls away, what you actually are when performance is no longer available as an option. It teaches you the precise quality of your own frequency by making it the only frequency you could reliably hear. And that knowledge, the knowledge of your own signal, held in the body, tested across years, refined through loss and recommitment, and the ongoing practice of choosing authenticity over adaptation, is what you now carry forward into the next phase. Not as a concept, but as a lived reality, as the foundation of everything that is arriving. Tonight, before you sleep, place your hand over your heart and say this not as a wish, but as a remembrance. I am not too much. I am exact. I release the frequency of isolation and I open to resonant arrival. I trust that what is coming has already found its coordinates. I am ready to be fully seen. These words carry weight when they are spoken from the body rather than the mind. When the hand is over the heart, when the breath has slowed, when the day has released its grip and the quiet of the night makes space for what is real. These words have the power to reorganize something in your field. Not because they are magic, but because they are true. And truth spoken in alignment creates resonance. It confirms the frequency. It says to the universe, I know what I am. I know what I carry. I am ready for it to be received. And the universe, which is always listening at the level of frequency rather than the level of words, hears that confirmation and responds in kind. This is your space and you are not in it alone anymore. Drop one word in the comments that describes what you have been carrying this whole time. Just one word, then read what others leave. And if something speaks to you, let them know. That simple act of acknowledgement is its own frequency transmission. This is how a field of resonance builds, one honest offering at a time. If something in this message landed in a place you did not expect, do not keep it to yourself. Someone you know is walking the same corridor. Share this with them. And if you are ready to keep going deeper, subscribe. Stay in the signal, because this is only the beginning of what wants to come.